Good evening. Welcome everybody to tonight's event. My name is Rob. I'm part of the recruitment and marketing team here at Now Teach. Behind the scenes, we've got Joe who's doing our tech and keeping everything running smoothly. So thank you in advance to Joe. We've also got Wendy and Rachel on hand behind the scenes. They're going to be answering your questions in the Q&A box. So do give some thought as to some of the questions you might like to ask, and I'll give you some instructions over the next few moments as to how you can start to pose those questions. I'm delighted to be here with you this evening, wherever you are in the country, whether you've got hailstones, snow, it's lovely and sunny, or it's just plain dull and cloudy. Wherever you are, you're more than welcome, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm delighted to be joined this evening by Gordon, one of our Now teachers, and Michelle and Max from the Teach First SCITT, who will be sharing their experiences of Now Teach, of teaching, and giving us a unique insight into a training provider's provision. So a big thanks in advance to our guests who are going to give some great insight as to what they offer and the beauties and wonders of training to be a teacher and progressing your career within secondary school education. With regards to tonight's event, we appreciate that those of you in the audience will be at a variety of different stages during your career change journey. You might just be starting to think about teaching. You might be getting ready to start in September. You might be going up into the attic to find your GCSE certificates, building personal statements, looking through CVs, trying to find a training provider, or just generally wondering what to do with your life. Whichever stage you're at, I hope we can answer as many questions as possible this evening. And if not, we will certainly be very keen to talk to you going forward, so we can do. Before we go any further, we'd love to know a little bit more about you and what stage of your career change you are at. So please could you complete the poll that will pop up in your screen in just a few seconds. This will give us a lovely idea in terms of who's with us this evening and how we can potentially pivot some of the content and address some of the questions that might be more relevant to your good selves. I'll pause briefly just while you're completing the poll. Wonderful. Thank you very much. One of the questions we want to cover tonight and address is why Now Teach? You appreciate you may wonder if you really want to join a further organisation when you're already maybe engaging with schools and training providers. Well, what we think and what we passionately feel, and I'm sure Gordon and colleagues will talk to about it a little later on, is that Now Teach is not more work. It's not more requirements. Plain and simple, it's about more support, and we'll explain that with you today. To make sure we can answer all of your burning questions, I mentioned the Q&A box. You'll see that highlighted on the screen just in red. To avoid confusion, this box is labelled Q&A, so it's not the box labelled chat. Our team are on hand to answer your queries that you've popped into that Q&A box. Some of the more generic questions we may well bring to our guests and be able to answer them live. Some of the more specific questions to you that might be more personal to you, again, please feel free to post and we can answer them offline. Wonderful. So the purpose of tonight's event is to share something about what it's like to change career to teaching and how Now Teach can help you make that transition happening. How we can support you during your training and how your training and how after your training you can be part of a network of hundreds of career changes as you progress your career. And wonderfully, we've got our colleagues from Teach First SCITT here who can talk about how they've supported career changes move into the education sector. At Now Teach, we passionately believe that we want to see a world where children benefit because talented people who've already had successful careers become teachers and bring their skills and experiences to the schools that need them the most. We won't cover every aspect of this, but we will do as much as we can by 7 p.m. to tackle the key bits and delve a little bit deeper into career change into teaching. Now, before we begin, let's hear from some of our Now teachers about their experience of changing career in this short film.
Even the teachers in the staff room are curious as to why someone at my stage of life have actually changed into teaching. And what I love about Now Teach is that we don't need to question each other's purpose for becoming teachers.
And so having the support of Now Teach, which is an organisation which is made up of people like me, has been really, really helpful through my training year and beyond, and I think will be part of it, of my future career.
The most important thing really is you're just not alone. You have that network of like-minded people that make you feel that you made the right decision, really.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Joe. That was shot at a summit. I believe that was 2 years ago now. We bring all of our Now teachers together in the summer for a day's conference where we share our stories, have some wonderful keynote speakers, and start to really build and expand on those connections. So it's a great day, and we're delighted that our network now gets up to about 1,300 Now teachers. Which leads us very nicely to our guest speaker tonight, Gordon. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Gordon in the first instance to share his experience in career changing, training to teach, and being a teacher. So Gordon, welcome, and over to you to share your experiences.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you. So I'm a physics teacher. I teach at, I think my badge might give it away. I teach at Didcot Girls' School, a single-sex state school in Oxfordshire, and I've been teaching there for I think close to 8-9 months now. I started this September. I actually also trained at the school, and I trained with Teach First. But I think starting back, the decision of becoming a teacher, so going back possibly 2 or 3 years now. My background is finance. I've worked in the City of London for, a bit ashamed to say, I've worked for decades there. So always taking the train in, getting onto the trading floor, working long hours, and enjoying it. I loved my previous career. But what I've noticed, I think as I was coming to this sort of this pivotal age of 50, I noticed that there were a few people who'd just been in the city for ages, and I thought, actually, I could be one of those people, but I'm not sure I want to be. So looking around me, I decided that I still had plenty of years left of doing something useful, and then very quickly decided of all the things I could change, I wasn't going to move from banking into some other sort of finance career. I didn't think it was worth picking up another industry career, and pretty quickly thought, actually, maybe I ought to give teaching a go. There is actually a rather sweet background to why teaching came up. I still vividly remember my physics teacher when I was at school. I remember his name, Peter Sammut. He was an absolute inspiration, and he turned me around from being perhaps not the best student into someone who really loved physics and really loved science. And I've always had that name and that person at the back of my mind. That was part of the inspiration of thinking, well, actually, if he did that to me, and over 30 years later, I still remember his name, and actually I'm still in touch with him, then perhaps I could do that to someone else. So that was the sort of the inspiration. What that teacher did to me and what that teacher meant to me, I could hopefully be that to a few other pupils. I didn't actually have quite as much time as many of you who are on this call to plan the switch. Foolishly, I thought I could just leave banking and start teaching at any point in the year. But obviously, school starts in September. So in May, I suddenly realized if I'm going to make this decision, I'm either going to do it now or I'm going to wait over a year and do it a year later. So I decided, actually, let's just take the plunge. I probably didn't think as much as I should have done. There were only a few spots left for training providers, but the one I happened to visit, the one at the Didcot school, I went to, I saw various pupils being taught, I had to walk around the classrooms. I remembered what it was like to stand in a school and smell what a school smells like. And I thought, actually, I could do this. So I enrolled on that SCITT. There was a very short, maybe not a test, but a little taster. So I I taught about 10 minutes of a lesson and walked out of that feeling scared, but actually feeling, yeah, I've done this. I can do it. So then signed up, joined the SCITT in September, and trained with Teach First, and had basically a wonderful year. Um, Quite a lot of work, quite a lot of getting organised, quite a lot of changing the way I have to think. But actually, there were so many highlights of that training year. I was really looking forward to becoming a teacher full time. And very luckily, that school happened to have a spot. So I was able to apply for the school and move to teaching the same subject in the same school, which was a lovely way to start a teaching career. And here I am now, halfway through, I think 12 classes that are all hopefully a bit better at physics than when they were before I started. So that's my journey.
Thanks, good. I'm sure they are. And I've just noticed in the chat that that one of our audience members, their sister went to that school. So we've already built up a connection. There's already a link there. Thank you so much, Gordon. Much appreciated. Lots of really interesting aspects that I'd love to probe on and go through a little bit more. But alongside Now Teach, you also mentioned the Teach First SCITT, and we're delighted to be joined by colleagues from Teach First, Max and Michelle, who will very kindly walk you through just a bit of an overview on the Teach First SCITT and the offer that's there and how it's suited to career changes. So I'll invite Max and Michelle to take the floor, and we can pick it up from there.
Thanks, Rob, and thanks, Gordon, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michelle. I'm Head of Regional Partnerships at Teach First, and within that role, I also work really closely with Max, who's Head of SCITT, who'll be talking to as well. And I'm actually also a career changer. I had a 12-year career in insurance before getting a conscience and then becoming a teacher. So I can empathise with the place you're at in your journeys at this stage. We're really pleased to be partnering with Now Teach at Teach First to offer our career changers an enhanced experience on our SCITT programme, both in terms of attracting potential career changers to undertake our SCITT programme through our network of delivery partners and through being part of that overall cohesive support experience package that working with Now Teach can offer. And we really value the experiences that Now Teach and career changers in particular bring to teaching. I'll start by introducing Teach First and our network of delivery partners, and then I'll hand over to Max, who'll speak in more detail about the SCITT programme itself and why it's ideally suited to career changers. And we're also really happy to pick up questions via the Q&A. So who are Teach First? Well, we're an education charity. We have a clear mission and vision for serving communities facing the biggest challenges. And we believe that no child's future should be determined by the postcode that they grow up in. And some of you might know us already as the largest provider of initial teacher training in England. We've got over 20 years of experience in delivering high quality initial teacher training, both through our HIPIT programme, which is our kind of graduate route typically, and our SCITT programme. And we're also piloting postgraduate teacher apprenticeship at the moment. So we've got lots of routes into teaching and considerable experience. We're graded outstanding by Ofsted, not just in ITT, but across all of our programmes, and we're a Times Top 100 graduate employer. On our SCITT programme, we work with almost 50 training stroke delivery partners across the country, and between them, they offer 13 secondary subjects, including the 3 sciences, business studies, computing, English, geography, history, maths, MFL, PE and RE. And if you live in the East Midlands, we're also piloting postgraduate teaching apprenticeship in biology or maths. And our training is underpinned by research and evidence, and it's developed by subject experts. This slide that you can see here shows our network of delivery partners, and you can see that it covers all areas of England with 8 in the northwest, 3 in the northeast, 3 in Yorkshire and Humber, 3 large partners in the East Midlands, 11 in the West Midlands, 4 in the southwest, 5 across the southeast, and 13 that have got a foothold in London. And in partnerships, we really hone in on that regional impact and homegrown part of being a teacher. So it's really important for us to recruit partners who are committed to the Teach First mission, of ensuring that no child's left behind due to their socio-economic background. And we're pleased that that network of partners are in really widespread, in a balance of locations, of towns, cities and coastal areas. Our focus on local impact and being placed in a local school enables both delivery partners and trainees to make a strong commitment to serving disadvantaged at local level. And that's a key differentiator of the approach we take on the HIPIT programme, real local focus. So Max will now tell you a little more about the SCITT programme itself, so you can decide if this is the right route for you.
Thanks, Michelle. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. So as you can see, our SCITT lasts an academic year. So from the start of term in September, as touched on by Gordon there, until the end of the school year in July. And you'll spend most of your time on our SCITT in school placement, initially observing and practicing, but fairly quickly taking on teaching episodes and then whole lessons, as well as the whole host of other activities that teachers deliver in their role. And you'll also spend the equivalent of 1 day a week studying. And that study will mean that you'll gain your qualified teacher status QTS at the end of the academic year, as well as a PGCE. And as Michelle's mentioned, we offer a range of secondary subjects and then also primary and early primary as well. So in terms of why our SCITT in particular, so there's an opportunity, as Michelle's touched on there, to train in a school near you. So enabling you to make a difference right where you live in your community, and somewhere that makes sense for you both professionally and personally. In terms of classroom experience, you'll work in a school from the start, so there won't be needing to sort of think about teaching in the abstract and then applying that theory later in practice. You'll have the opportunity straight away to get stuck into working directly with pupils and having that impact right from the beginning of your training. And then, as I've touched on, you'll finish the programme with a PGCE and QTS, and then be able to move on to building a meaningful second or third career from there. And that PGCE and QTS gives you flexibility as to how and where you do that moving beyond that training year. And then it mentions there the sort of minimum starting salary, and Gordon's spoken about securing a permanent role in the school that he trained in, and we see that a lot on our SCITT. Many of our trainees on the programme at the moment have also secured permanent roles in their placement schools or in the schools that they've visited as part of their broader school experience. So the other great thing about the SCITT is that you get to build up your network of schools right from your training year. You get to know 2 or 3 schools really well and start to build up that kind of professional network, specifically in the education sector, and think about kind of what school is going to be a good fit for you as you're thinking about your longer term first permanent role. And then finally, on this section, we really recognise the value of that industry and other lived experiences and their impact in the classroom. As it says on the slide, nearly 30% of our SCITT trainees are career changers. So our delivery partners work with already a fairly significant volume of career changers on their programmes. They also really value that expertise and that experience. And as Michelle's touched on, we're working with Now Teach to deliver support directly to trainees as well as to mentors who support career changes in moving into the education sector, so that there is that bespoke support available. And then just to give a brief overview of the programme itself, and obviously happy to answer any specific questions and give a bit more detail when we move to that part of the call. So the programme is broadly split into the 3 terms of the school year, and at the beginning of each term you'll start with a period of what's called intensive training and practice, or ITAP, and these are essentially mini boot camps where you'll explore specific knowledge and skills in relation to teaching and get a chance to observe and practice them in action. I'm sure Gordon will remember them well. Terms 1 and 3 are spent in your main placement school, and then 6 weeks of your second term, that middle term, are spent in another school, gaining some experience of a completely different setting. And then, as you'll see on the slide, there are 2 assignments for the PGCE, which are scheduled into the second and third term. The teaching happens in the term prior, and then your submission is in that second and third term, so that you reach the summer having achieved your QTS and the PGCE. So I'll leave it there, but as I say, we'll happy to dig into a bit more detail when we move to the Q&A.
That's wonderful, Max. Thank you so much. So as everyone may have noticed, probably from the first few slides, teaching comes, and certainly teaching training comes, with an awful lot of acronyms that would start to go through. So I'm going to do my best to explain some of them, and then invite Gordon, Max, and Michelle in with some questions around how they come together and how they approach that from a trainee teacher perspective to a training provider. So we would have touched on a couple of elements there. Max and Michelle have talked us through the school-centred initial teacher training route, which is very much in schools from day one. Another route could be to go to a university and study in a higher education setting, which is slightly more of an academic route. So you'll be going into the classroom, but not as a teacher, into the classroom as a student to start off with, and going through more of the potentially kind of the academic side, as opposed to the practical to start off with. I'm just wondering, Gordon, you mentioned that you did a bit of school experience, and then you came into Didcot School, and then you went through the SCITT route. I just wondered if you had to consider which would be the best for you, whether going into a university setting or potentially going through into the SCITT, which you chose to do.
Thank you. Well, as I said, I probably rushed this decision more than I would normally have made for a life-changing decision. But I think that actually might have been the right thing to do. I did apply to both a school-centred training program, or the SCITT, as I called it earlier. I also looked at the university-based approach. They were both interesting. They both had their strengths, and certainly they both give you the same qualification at the end. So there isn't a huge amount of difference. But the difference I noticed was that the SCITT was more driven by a school and live teachers who were teaching you, and classes that you sat at the back of and learnt the ropes from an absolute a live educational environment. The university-based approach was more tuition in a lecture theatre to start with, and I think it was slightly more academic, but there was also a lot more hand-holding for people who were perhaps a bit younger than I was. So not to say that one is better than the other, or even that one gives you more training than the other, but I think the style of the SCITT, actually, I've always worked in an office, I've always worked live in a place. So if I'm going to become a teacher, the first place I want to be is in a school, not in a university hall. So that for me made me think that the school-based SCITT and the Teach First opportunity was better for me. And I'm also very glad, because I was immersed straight into that first school, and luckily loved it. It actually made it this sort of very clear transition. I felt I was actually teaching from the beginning. Maybe not really teaching, but I got my new job. I was at Didcot Girls' School. I was standing in front of a bunch of students, and I was delivering lessons, and that really, really felt great. That's what kind of kept me going all that time. I was always actually doing something. There was relatively little of that year spent sort of studying books or reading research papers. But everyone is different, and I think certainly perhaps people who've come out of university and haven't got those years of experience in an industry might find it more comfortable starting through a university-based route. It's different for different people.
Brilliant.
I did also, sorry, I was just looking at the chat. There was one comment about experience, and I think the comment was answered in the chat. It definitely is, if you're not sure about it, it's good to have a day's experience in a school. I didn't actually have it, and it didn't harm me. So I just wanted to add, don't let that put you off. If you feel that there's no way that you can see a school, yes, you are jumping more into the unknown. That doesn't mean you're going to be a bad teacher. It just means you've not got you've got one day less experience to know how it's going to work out. But it didn't harm me at all.
Brilliant. Thanks, Gordon. Much appreciated. Just so that was the route that you took. So I suppose there's broadly, I suppose, three different options, and I'm going to invite Max and Michelle in here to comment on a few moments' time. But one of the fabulous things that Teach First, I suppose, was initially very famous for its high potential program that was launched, what, 25 years ago within the graduate market, that took people into an intense teacher training within a school, and then kind of offered people the opportunity either to stay on or to move into other industry sectors. Gordon sort of touched there a bit on higher education, and then obviously we've got the SCITT route. And Max, Michelle, you both kind of mentioned how this is really quite an interesting way to get to a local school and start to see and apply your knowledge into a kind of the location and the community that you want to teach at. Maybe the more high potential graduate route, or potentially the graduate route, needs to be more slightly geographically mobile. I just wondered, yeah, what are you seeing as the real benefits from your career changer audience of coming straight into the schools and being achieving their QTS, PGCE within a school centered scenario?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I'll jump in, and then I'm sure if I miss anything, Michelle can come in too. So there are a few things. Absolutely, that kind of flexibility to identify a delivery partner and a placement school that makes sense for individuals based on kind of where they're currently living, where their commitments are. Obviously, career changers are more likely than graduates to have caring commitments, family responsibilities, ties to an area that are not so flexible to kind of pick up and move on the basis of 1 year of training. And so we are fairly widespread, work with lots and lots of schools around the country. So a good opportunity there to kind of personalise exactly where it is you want to train. May even know schools quite well, having lived in areas for a period of time, and maybe having had your own children, kind of go through them. So that's the first thing I'd say. The second thing is that so on our SCITT, we run an extended second school placement. So there is a kind of statutory minimum requirement of a second school experience across all routes and all providers. But ours runs for quite a lot longer than the statutory requirement. So our trainees get quite an in-depth feel for a completely different type of school as compared to their main placement, as compared to other routes. And our experience is that career changers, once they're in a permanent teaching role, tend to progress quite quickly, either in terms of leadership roles in schools or developing their specialist expertise quickly. And the benefit of that extended second school placement is it enables career changers to really start to build a picture of where their interests, skills, and passions lie very early on in that training experience. And therefore enables them to make decisions about where they might want their first or second permanent role to be in relation to those interests. The third thing I'll say, and Michelle touched on this during our presentation, so Teach First have an in-house expert subject and phase team, and our subject-specific content is of exceptional quality. Career changers are often working at a greater distance from their degree, and so often require and really enjoy a greater depth of subject-based curriculum. And our subject-based curriculum is developed to an incredibly high standard because we develop all of that with subject specialists in-house. And then the final point I'll flag is that career changers come often with a real commitment to making a difference to the lives of young people. And you might say that's true of anyone considering teaching as a profession, but it is particularly brave to change track. And so we find those that do often deeply care about their impact in their community. And obviously, as Michelle flagged when we started speaking, Teach First is a charity that's working at a sector level as well as at a school level to improve outcomes for young people who typically experience the greatest barriers to educational success. And so opting to train with us means that you also get that opportunity to engage in that wider movement for change that's having an impact at a systemic policy and national level, as well as at a classroom level.
Oh, thanks, Max. Much appreciated. We're getting some great questions that are coming through. I'm just going to fire one back to Gordon, and then I'm going to try and scoop up in the next few slides some of the commonly asked questions that I can maybe work through. Gordon, I'm just interested in your experience with the Now Teach network. How have that? Max mentioned that changing track it requires a degree of bravery, and you're moving into the unknown slightly, and it's not necessarily a well-trodden path. But you're one of 1,300 career changers in that Now Teach network. How do you engage with that network, and how have they been supportive, and what do you find particularly energizing about being part of that career change network?
Thank you, Rob. Yes, I think my answer was probably covered in that video. Robert talked about it just being a great network of other similar-minded people, and I know it sounds simple, but that's basically it for me. I know a whole bunch of other people across many different subjects, across many different types of school, from challenge schools to really high-flying schools, and we're all in it together. There's the socials, which I love to go to because it's a chance to chat to people face to face. But actually, there's that sort of the chat room where people can post questions, and not all the questions in that chat room are particularly related to teaching. I think there was one where someone was worried about what sort of lunch they should bring into school and whether they'd be judged on it. And there was a whole bunch of camaraderie, and people came back and talked about what they did and whether they had school dinners or not. And it just felt nice that you're part of this much bigger community. I'm fortunate that my school, I think that the teachers are very close. I think actually in most schools the teachers are really close together. But I do know that it's a lovely safety net if there was something that I wasn't sure about that I wouldn't want to ask people at the local school. I could rely on the Now Teach network, and I would be able to safely ask a question for dozens of other people who are in a similar spot to me.
Thank you, Gordon. I remember a story. Lisa, who did one of our webinars a couple of months ago, she was talking about her first lesson, and she was stood at the front, and she got there 15 minutes early. She's very, very nervous, and she just put a message on the WhatsApp group, and just to say that she was nervous. She was actually going into it, and she said she was delighted within those 15 minutes. She got something like 10 or 15 replies of "good luck, you'll be fine," etc., which really carried her through that session. So yeah, it's great to have people in your corner, people of a similar experience and of a similar motivation to want to give something back, and to build a great future for the next generation. So yeah, it's a wonderful network, and I'll probe you a little bit further on that in a few moments' time. So thanks, Gordon, Max, and Michelle. I'm going to return to a couple of slides, just cover some top level information that I think the vast majority of our audience would hopefully be helpful to set a bit more context. While I'm going through this, please do fire through the questions. There's definitely some great ones in that Q&A box that I want to come back to. But let me just touch on a few of these things before we get back into our Q&A. So we touched on this, but just to qualify, there's a couple of training options should you wish to career change into teaching. There's the university-based route that we touched on, and the school-centered route. So thanks to Max and to Gordon for their overviews of the difference of those two. But those are the two primary ways to go into it. In terms of qualifications, to become a teacher, you need to have a qualified teacher status. You don't have to have the PGCE, although some people do decide they'd like to go through it, and they do feel that gives some extra context and support in terms of their teaching practice. When we start to move through, we can think about the different criteria to become eligible. So GCSE maths and English. So I always get a little bit confused. C4s, it was C in my time, particularly for some of you that are slightly younger, or above or equivalent, and you'll also need an undergraduate degree. Broadly speaking, across the piece, it's an honours degree, A-level, or experience of your subject. And that's particularly important, I think, for career changes. Further criteria and subject availability, eligibility is variable depending on your training route, but that gives you hopefully a basic overview. If you have overseas qualifications, you can apply to a governing body called Enoch, who will be able to give you a statement of comparability. A few notes on subjects. Max, thank you for your overview of, and Michelle, thank you for the insight into the Teach First SCITT approach. Across the Now Teach network, we're able to help you find the subject that's right based on your experience, interests, and qualifications. The subjects we support are listed there. We tend to support most in what the government have called shortage subjects, which tend to be those that are in most demand, maths, physics, chemistry, modern foreign languages, and computer science being predominant amongst them. But we also support across all of those subjects that are on your slides there. Changing career can mean a change of income for many. The financial support is available. Here's a list of the different bursaries and the scholarships. So for the core shortage subjects, it could be anything up to 29k. Loans will be available up to the 9,790, the equivalent of a year of tuition fees when you're doing your ITE training. And then depending on your status, there's also maintenance loans that are available to cover living costs, etc., etc. Once you gain QTS and you enter the teacher training scale, newly qualified teachers begin on a salary of around 31k outside of London, 33k within London. So how does Now Teach support with all of these different finding the right area for you? So what we do from a Now Teach perspective, our recruitment team is here to support you find your appropriate route to become a teacher, to support you with their application, to give you advice through the DfE Apply service, helping you secure interviews, write personal statements, introducing you to some of our wonderful partners. Max and Michelle are here today from Teach First SCITT. We'll help you to provide insight, guidance of the interview processes, any hints and tips that we can do to support you in there. Wendy, Rach, Joe and the team have got, and they won't mind me saying this, over 50, 60 years experience of supporting people to find their right fit when they career change and go into teacher training. So got an awful lot of expertise there to support you. During your first 2 years, you'll become part of the Now Teach network. We'll support you with one-to-one support that we're lacing in with partners such as Teach First within the curriculum and outside the curriculum to provide you that triangulated support to get you up to speed and to make sure you're comfortable. And that network is incredibly important, as Gordon has touched on, and hopefully my example of Lisa began to expand on. So we think that we can help you into teacher training, we can help you find the right place for teacher training, help you through teacher training, and connect you to a group of like-minded individuals that have got a similar passion, will be coming up to similar hurdles, and will provide a similar community that you can flourish in your teacher training going forward. So I hope that gives an overview of Now Teach and how we can support. We will follow up with some details of how you can get in touch with us and express an interest in the support that we can find. But what I would like to do, and what I suppose is most important, is to answer some of your questions. And I can see them coming through thick and fast. So I'm really interested, Gordon, and this is, I think, a great question. So apologies if it's a little bit deep. But when did you first feel that you'd made the right decision? What was that moment that you suddenly, maybe all the nerves and the anxiety kind of started to dissipate, and you thought, yeah, I've made the right decision. I'm in the right place, doing the right thing. I'm feeling comfortable.
So I think maybe about 2 months after I'd started training, two or 3 months after I started training, so that very first term, I found out through one of our lab technicians that she'd overheard a girl say to another girl, "Mr. Ball, he's my favorite teacher." And it was a completely unguarded comment. The students didn't realize the lab technician was standing behind them. But that message sort of got passed back to me. And at that point, my heart leapt. I just thought, wow, 3 months in, and actually someone thinks I'm an okay teacher. Better than an okay teacher. Back at the start, you really, really put a lot of care into your lessons. And I think maybe that had shone through. For an hour of teaching, you maybe spend 2 or 3 hours just rehearsing it in your mind, thinking, what students might do or what students might not do. So I was definitely putting more effort in back at the start. And equally, I was only teaching probably, I think, one lesson a day at that time. But just hearing that actually I wasn't terrible. Someone
Yeah.
actually liked what I was doing. That just made me realize, yeah, this is worth it.
Brilliant. Oh, great. Thank you for sharing that, Gordon. I'm going to invite Michelle in, and maybe Michelle, from a couple of angles. I'm really interested that I know you're a career changer. You moved from insurance after 12 years working in that industry to become a teacher. And then obviously managing the Teach First skits across the country. And as you mentioned, 30% of your cohorts are career changers. I just wondered if you've got any personal reflections on what you found different moving from industry into teaching, and then what your career changers have commented to you about what they find different from industry to actually being in the classroom. So Michelle, have you got a view that you could share, perhaps personal and professional?
Yeah, I think the biggest surprise going into teaching was just like how you're just suddenly like back as a learner, both academically and like learning a new skill set and a new set of uh, yeah, just in terms of that almost like nerves and fear of the first time you ever teach a lesson, and yeah, it was crazy, but yes. So from a personal perspective, being a career changer, I found it. I had to kind of keep it in line, in sync a bit because I'd worked before. I think people found that quite strange that I wasn't like really naive in the classroom and in school. And when I started in my early career teacher years, I was getting responsibilities left, right, and centre because I'd held them in industry. Um, and everyone was saying, "Oh, you don't want to take on too much." But I thought, no, I can, and that's why I've changed careers because I haven't changed careers to kind of just sort of plod along and see my time out in life. I've changed careers to have a new career. So I very quickly went into leadership in school. I became an assistant head teacher within 3 years of teaching, having been in industry before. So yeah, I think the career trajectory is something that was like a real positive, but also something to keep in check if you're not looking for leadership. And then in terms of career changers and their experiences, I think it's that whole thing of giving something back. And I think that's what all of us who've become teachers kind of go into that for. Sometimes in industry, you can feel like you're kind of serving somebody else's purpose. You're meeting KPIs, you're earning great money usually as well. But there's no reward quite like the light on someone's face when they suddenly get it, or even on a personal level, when someone said that you're a really great teacher and they really like the way that you do things, the way that. So I think that that's some of the feedback that we've also had from the career changers we work with, that whole thing around making a difference. And I think specifically as well to our skit, and our skit isn't the only route into teaching. You can go local, you can like almost choose your school, and you can make that work around your pre-existing commitments. And in some routes, like our other route, like our better known route, there is an expectation of moving to where you're needed. Whereas with this, it's 1 year, not 2 years, and you go where you want to be. And a lot of the time that's local because career changers have already put their roots down, and want to make a difference to their own local communities.
That's great. Thanks, Michelle. We do a survey of our NOUT teachers every year, and that thing about giving back and about a legacy really kind of comes into a lot of the feedback, and is one of the main reasons for people moving. Michelle, just while I've got you on screen, I'm going to ask you a further question, then I'm going to invite Gordon back in to comment on this question too. But what do you think is the advantage of being a career changer going into teaching, having, in your case, 12 years experience? In the Now Teach network, our average age of a career changer is 48, so they have over 15 years worth of experience. What was the benefit to teacher training and to becoming a teacher, and having that experience in your view?
Just having stuff in your toolkit that you as examples, So I taught information technology, as was known then, and computing, and then, like many teachers, ended up teaching some business studies. And because I'd worked in industry, it was really easy to draw on live examples and bring things to life. So I think that's a real advantage of being a career changer, because if you're straight from school, straight to university, and then straight back into the classroom, you're not bringing that breadth and those life experiences that people find really valuable. And I think the other thing I mentioned before is around your ability to take on responsibilities. You're savvy about workplaces and whose cup not to use and what chair not to sit in and all of those things. And so you become somebody that's being targeted for leadership quite quickly if that's what you want. So whilst there's some nervousness around changes in salary and like paying fees and things like that, you very quickly recoup any of those kind of financial losses. But what you get back, as I said before, is what you get in the heart from being in the classroom. On mute.
There we go. Sorry, I knew I'd do it. I knew I'd do it. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. It's lovely. It's much appreciated. Gordon, just to invite you back in. What do you think is the benefit of all of those years of experience in industry before becoming a teacher? And have you seen that play out just yet in your few months at Didcot?
Yes. So actually, just adding and maybe sort of putting a bit of a twist on what Michelle said a few moments ago. First of all, I do think the fact that we've had years of experience making sales pitches to tough clients actually puts us in a great spot to be able to stand in front of a classroom and effectively make a sales pitch to 30 students. So definitely, even within the SCITT, and there were a lot of great people on the SCITT with me, but I could turn up, stand in front of a classroom, and it was my classroom, and I'd earned it, and they were going to listen to me. So there's that sort of seriousness and gravitas that you can talk, you know how to command a room. That only comes with experience, and it doesn't have to be 15 years of teaching in a school. It can be 15 years of working in industry and giving presentations and just knowing how to hold yourself when you're talking to a classroom. So that definitely helped me very, very quickly find my feet in a classroom. The interesting thing Michelle said, and I know we are in a great spot to be able to move to more senior leadership positions quickly because we bring all this other experience. But it is an option. I know for myself, and I mean, it may change, but for myself, I'm actually teaching because I love the idea of helping students get better GCSE grades or discover a passion for something. At the moment, I don't feel I've got any interest in trying to move into a senior leadership position. And that's kind of also refreshing because I'm definitely one of the older people in the staff room. There are a lot of people who've come out of university and at the age of 25 wanted to make their career in teaching and possibly be a head teacher at some point. And that's fine. And that's great for them. It's quite refreshing, having done that in a bank for many years, to not also do that in a school. I'm not trying to compete with them. I'm not trying to use my experience to get to a position quicker than they can. They're there, they've got their career to make. I've already made my career. I'm just here to, sounds a bit crazy, not enjoy myself, but actually I'm just here to teach. And that is actually very refreshing. You can choose to be on the career ladder and go through it quickly because you've got years of experience, or you can choose not to. And interestingly, Michelle, you said you taught computing. I guess another advantage for me as well. I applied to teach physics or to teach science and physics. The school were really desperate to find a computer science teacher, and I said, well, actually, I have been in IT for quite a while, so they leapt the chance, and I do now teach quite a bit of computing. I have had no formal education in computing, but I've had so many decades sitting in front of a PC and doing things with it. Actually, it's worked out quite well, and certainly for Key Stage 3 and going into Key Stage 4 as well, I've just got that life experience that means I can talk enough about computer science to do a good job in that classroom.
Right. Thanks, Gordon. I'm interested, just pulling on one of those threads, and something that comes up quite a lot, and referencing one of the questions is, it's interesting, the generations, or the different generations in that kind of education setting. So you're potentially have peers that are 30 years younger than you. You're teaching people in their teens. You're maybe one of the older people within the school, but relatively new in your practice. How do you find that kind of dynamic, from going to the top of one sector to the bottom of the other, and starting from scratch? How have you found that? How have you found that change?
I mean, I think everyone's different. For me, as I said last time, it was quite refreshing to feel that I'm not on the career ladder.
Yeah.
I've already done my bit of the career ladder. I've loved it. I've worked hard, and this is actually more a chance to not have to think about that, and instead just to think about how 30 students are going to respond to my Hook's Law practical, or whatever. So I find it
Yeah.
refreshing.
Right. And you just think about your training year. How's that workload? Have you found it? How have you coped with? And I'll invite Max and Michelle in a few moments, just to get their reflections on that first year, and some of the pressures and challenges. But Gordon, from your own experience, have you found that initial start to your teaching career?
Um, to be honest, I did find it hard, but I think that was probably that was a problem of my own making. Um, Teaching is one of those areas that seems to take as many hours as you want to give it. So again, I was very part of the reason that I was switching career. I've got 4 children, and those children have now left home. So a whole load of things that used to take up time are no longer taking up time. Unfortunately, what I found that's filled up with is just trying to make that perfect presentation that will make that concept really clear. The school has dozens of presentations, dozens of teaching materials, which would be perfectly good, but actually, just because of what I enjoy, I want to tweak those, and I want to make the lesson my own. That does mean I do spend probably more time than I ought to just thinking about materials, but equally, I know a couple of other people on the SCITT have got young children and have incredibly busy lives just managing those young families. So don't spend the same amount of time. It doesn't mean they're worse teachers. It just means that they're different teachers. They're relying on the materials that are already provided, and they're doing their style of lesson, and I'm doing my style of lesson, and they're both as good as each other.
Thanks,
So
Gordon.
definitely, it takes up all the hours you're prepared to give. So
Yeah.
you have to decide how many hours you want to give.
Yeah, great advice. Thank you. Max, Michelle, just thinking about that first year or so, and could you sort of share what you think are some of the common challenges, and how the Teach First skit is there to sort of support the trainees through that first year?
Yeah, I'd absolutely echo what Gordon said there about and we often see that trainees and career changers in particular sort of are aiming for that kind of brilliant, perfect outcome as much of the time as is possible. And actually, I think there's increasing recognition in the sector that people come out of their training year with lots of experience and lots of knowledge, but are by no means kind of mastered all there is to master about teaching. The beauty and the challenge of it as a career is that it's an evolving beast, and the lives of young people change significantly over time. I haven't been in the classroom for 10 years, and when I was teaching, I wasn't needing to factor in artificial intelligence and the kind of widespread use of social media and smartphones in a way that teachers will be needing to think about now. So it's an evolving profession, and the learning is continual. So I think kind of having that longer thinking in mind, and knowing that actually, yes, I'll learn a vast amount in my first year, but there will be more to learn in the subsequent years, indefinitely. But as curricula evolves, and as the lives of young people shift and change. In terms of how we support trainees in particular, I've touched on this in one of my answers to one of the questions. We our delivery partners and schools are deeply committed to kind of meeting the individual needs of trainees, whether those are in relation to health, in relation to learning, or in relation to kind of balancing what is, as Gordon's touched on, a demanding programme with family or care and responsibilities. So we provide really responsive adjustments, and make sure that those are reviewed regularly to ensure that trainees are met where they are and enabled to thrive, and ultimately to gain QTS. And we have lots of trainees who, were worried about the impact of one aspect or another of kind of their current circumstances and how that might limit their outcomes on the programme, and have gone on to achieve QTS and achieve that PGCE with that bespoke support from us and from delivery partners. So we're deeply committed to that aspect of our work. We also work really closely with mentors in school and with our university partner is Sheffield Hallam, and we work really closely with them on supporting trainees with the academic and the practical aspects. So there's a whole network of support that kind of sit around trainees it's obviously a multifaceted programme, but there's lots of support available, that sits there as a sources of advice, support, as well as that kind of more bespoke and responsive adjustment where that's needed. And that is the advantage of a school-centred non-salaried route, is that because SCITT trainees are supernumerary, there is a lot of flexibility in the way that they can sort of experience the programme, more flexibility than you might experience on a salaried route, where you are taking up a role and therefore often required to be in a certain place at a certain time with a bit less flexibility. So I would say it's a good, having young children myself now, it's a good route if you have lots of other things going on and would benefit from being able to get to school pickup or get to school drop off and stuff like that.
Thanks, Max. Much appreciated. I think we've got time for one last question, and I'll invite Gordon on to answer this. We see a lot of talk on the news about behaviour in classrooms, students with special educational needs, etc. I just wondered, have you found that in your experience of teaching and the support that's been provided to help you manage that?
So the school I'm at is a state school. It's a very large school with I think probably a UK average of pupils with additional needs. It's not been a struggle. I think the main success for schools that do it well is a strong senior leadership team. So if I'm in a classroom and there is a pupil who has become dysregulated, I don't have to worry about how to handle the whole classroom. I can quickly send a message to the senior leadership team, and someone will come and help that student out, for them to leave the classroom. I think every school is slightly different. I know some people want a very quiet, calm, small school. Other people relish the thought of a really challenging school, and everyone finds the school they want. But I do think you're definitely expected to hold control of the classroom and teach well, but you're not there to solve every single pupil's behavioural challenge. There's a team that do that, and you just have to quickly get them on, and they've got the years of experience of dealing with behavioural problems. They can deal with this one. You just focus on delivering the message on teaching.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Well, we're coming up to time. I'm going to close with a couple of slides, but before I do so, I'd just like to thank Gordon so much for sharing his experience. Much appreciated. It's always lovely to hear about your stories, and I was going to check in with you, but I will do this offline. You were helping a candidate, one of your students last week with their job interview preparation, so I will check in with you later to see how they got on. Max, Michelle, thank you so much for talking about your wonderful offer with Teach First SCITT. We'll make sure that we'll send any further questions your way that might be in the chat boxes that have come through from our audiences. So thank you so much for joining us. Much appreciated. Really do appreciate your time and your insight. Just a couple of closing slides before we go. Thank you so much for coming along. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We're going to pop up a feedback poll for you to complete. If you don't mind just taking a few moments to do so, it would be great to understand whether this session has met your objectives or how we can improve it. Be really keen to get your view on that. And before I close, and just to make sure you're aware of how to access Now Teach and what the Now Teach offer is, we offer free expert advice to apply for teacher training. We are a charity. We are funded by some wonderful organisations, trusts, etc., to provide support to career changers accessing secondary school. We really believe that you can make a difference in the classroom, like Gordon and the 1,300 other Now teachers out there. So we'd love to be able to support you in doing so. We're able to provide 2 years professional career change support, a lifetime membership to that network of career changers, and help you make an impact on young people's lives with your previous experience, and working in partnership with Now Teach SCITT, Teach First SCITT, and their wonderful delivery partners. We hope to be able to expand that ever further. So please do click on the link on the email that will be sent through, complete an EOI, talk to our team, and we'd love to help you on your career change journey. Apologies for overrunning, but thank you so much for joining, and I wish you a great evening and good luck in your career change.